If you're in Seattle, and you need to buy or sell a home, we'll be right there for you. Because we're the realtors that you can trust. So go to ronanddonsitdown.com.
You're listening to The Ron and Don Show on the Ron and Don Radio Network.
Hey, you guys, what's going on? And welcome to episode 873 now of the Ron and Don Show, and we are back live in the Les Schwab studio.
What is up, Ron and Don Nation?
Hey, coming up on the Ron and Don Show, let's talk about an exciting thing. Let's say that you're playing AAA baseball. It's the fourth inning, and all of a sudden, the Mariners call you and say, "We need you." That happened to a young man by the name of Cole Young. And the cool thing is, in real time, they showed him in the fourth inning going out back behind the dugout and calling his parents on the phone and letting them know that he got called up to the show for the first time. So can't wait to talk about that. Also, Randy Johnson, they're going to retire his number, but I thought he was an Arizona Diamondback, Ron.
This will be interesting.
We'll talk about that. And then also the summer vacation numbers are in, and it seems like it is true. A lot of people are deciding to not come to the United States, and we'll talk about why that might be. Before we get going today, I want to talk about this story because it's happening in real time. And by the time you hear our podcast, it's probably days later. And hopefully they found this asshole. And I don't use that term lightly. And you know I don't cuss a lot on this show, and neither does Ron. But I can't think of another word to describe a man who's formerly in the military, becomes a dad of three beautiful daughters in Wenatchee, Washington. And then mom and dad end up going through a divorce. So he's living in his truck. He has mental illness. It's all documented. The state knows that. And yet still, when he came knocking on the door and demanding that he have visitation with his daughter, he was granted that visitation. A lot of people are blaming what happened next on the police because the day before he had gone to a campground. He had scouted out this campground. He returned to the campground a day later, and like a coward, and these girls I think are 7, 8, and 9, 6, maybe 8 and 9. He choked all of them to death and killed all three of them. He left his truck. They can't find him, of course. But they did find the three little girls, and now people are irate, and they are blaming the police department on this. I just want to tell people that when it comes to what the police do and what the police don't do, it really comes down to the laws that are decided in our state by state legislatures. This is why Ron and I always say, when it comes to the elections, everybody's always so worried about who the president's going to be or who our congressperson's going to be. And you should be. But the most important elections, Ron, people don't vote in. And those are the elections that decide things like this that concerns reunification. I remember a number of years ago when we were still at Cairo, I went with one of my friends that's a family law attorney, and I also went with my friend Ann Bremner. And we had gone to court, and I got to sit up front and watch how family law kind of works. And I was amazed at the amount of parents that came in. In fact, I've shared this story with you before, Ron. There was a young lady that was brought into court in handcuffs, and you could tell that she'd been beaten pretty severely. And then there was a young man that was brought into court, and he was in handcuffs, and you could tell that he had been beat, slapped, and probably stabbed. So mom and dad are standing there. There's three kids at home, and the judge is deciding who's going to go to jail and who's going to go home, and in this case, also take care of their three daughters. So you got to hear the judge speak to the mom. What the mom had done is she was so afraid of him that she took $5 million that they had. He was working at Microsoft at the time. And she transferred all that money to Brazil, where her family is. And then she had passports for her daughters. And he found out that she was planning on leaving him and leaving the country and taking those three girls, right? So here's a judge having to decide. And what I asked my friend Juliana is I said, hey, these kids are going to end up in foster care, right? She said, probably not. What the judge is trying to figure out is when I look at the mom and I look at the dad, and it looks like mom's a fight risk, and it looks like dad's very violent, and first and foremost, they have a domestic issue that's not going to be settled in family court. It's going to be settled in a different court. But that judge has to figure out in real time, what are we going to do with these 3 young girls? You might put them in foster care, but because we live in a state where it's all about reunification, typically what they do is they say, hey, where's a grandparent or where's an aunt, right? They try to keep the kids within the family. And then as soon as they believe that mom or dad are a little more stable, that's where the child will end up. And then for the other parent, what they have to do is ask the state, well, I would like to have the right to go visit my child. And speaking of Ann Bremner, we saw this with the Powell boys a number of years ago, where Josh Powell said, I want to visit my 2 boys. And the state said, okay, but we don't trust you, so we're going to send you out with a guardian. That guardian was a 76-year-old woman. He had rented a house way down south. He had built, and some of this isn't public knowledge, but we know this. He had built bombs out of gasoline containers. And when the woman came to the door for the boys to have their visitation, he ended up pushing that woman away. He brought the boys in the house. He did horrible things to them, which I'm not going to go into here. And then he placed a gasoline bomb in each of their laps, and he blew them up. Imagine being the investigator walking through that. That's all because the state wanted to reunify Josh Powell with his kids. Same thing here that we see in Wenatchee. So it tells us that nothing has changed. They see this father has mental illness. They see the mother who has a parenting plan. And in the parenting plan, it is modified that he is not allowed to be with those kids alone. And yet, when he came to get those kids and she called the police didn't do anything about it. In fact, there wasn't even an Amber Alert for those kids until days later when they knew that those kids were dead. And when you call the police department sometimes, and as a parent, you go through the court system and you get a parenting plan. A lot of times when the police department shows up, they'll say, hey, we can't do anything about it because it's a civil matter. So you have to go back to the judge in court, and you have to see if the judge wants to do anything about it. And in real time, that's almost impossible to do.
You say a parenting plan, is that issued by the court? That's a court order?
It's something that typically, and it's a good question, that the 2 parents agree upon if they can. And they say,
filed in court.
Yeah, and they say, this is how we're going to parent our child. This is how we're going to pay the bills. This is what we're going to do during the holidays. And you try to come up with a plan that you think is going to work for that child. What happens in Washington State a lot of times, and we have a friend, and I won't say who he is, but he took in a young boy, his family did, who came from a house where this boy wasn't being loved and cared for. And they ended up loving this boy and caring for this boy for almost 3 years. And then the state came back and said, hey, mom's out of jail. We're going to go ahead and reunify the boy now with mom. And that's what they did.
Yeah.
They've never seen that boy again. They are heartbroken. As a result of that, they will never be foster parents again, because they're like, foster parents have no rights. We've been caring for this child for the last 3 years, and then they rip them out of our custody.
And willing to adopt or willing to do it long term.
And so going back to Wenatchee, you see this mom that's very capable. All the warning signs were there. This guy is ex-military. This guy they knew was a lot of trouble. And there's nothing she could do about having her daughters picked up and this man taking them away. She knew that this was coming, and there was nothing to stop him. And so we can sit here and blame police departments, but I really think we have to blame the fact, Ron, and you and I covered this. In fact, our listeners helped bury the Powell boys. Along with the Pierce County Sheriff's Department, we went down and we bought 2 plots. And then we also ended up buying more plots in the cemetery, because when the family found out where the 2 boys are going to be buried, they tried to bury Josh there. And we said, well, how many do we buy? Do we 12, 13?
Yeah, all of them.
If we buy them all up, then there's no way that Josh can be buried in that cemetery. And so our listeners, we spent one afternoon, we raised all the money, and we ended up buying all those plots. What say you? Because it seems like here we have the Powell story. which was probably 15 years ago, close to 18 years. There's a huge judgment against Josh and against the state that I think Ann was able to achieve for the Cox family. That was almost $100 million, right? But it's not about the money for them. When you ask those grandparents, it was really about having those boys in their lives. And those boys were ripped out of their custody because they were the grandparents and they weren't the dad. And the thought was that the dad had also murdered the mother in the Powell case, if you want to look it up. It's a crazy story. Google Susan Powell. But here we are in Wenatchee. The world is out there. There's television cameras from all over the world. They're following this horrible story. And people want to blame it on the police. And I got to say, it really comes down to legislation in this state, because if the police don't have the ability to step in, and if the feeling of the court system here, Ron, is always going to be to reunify, kids are going to die like they have in Wenatchee. This is going to continue. And it pisses me off, and I'm very angry and very upset about it today.
And I feel that anger out of you, and I don't disagree with anything you said. What my mind goes to is rewinding way back from this point of intervention that you talked about. Obviously should have been handled differently, and there's going to be critiques and all that stuff. But when you think about a man like this, and I think about this a lot, even with the age, your son and people his age,
Yep.
the messaging that's going to young men right now is in a lot of ways, and people, if they're not online and they don't, when they hear this term, the manosphere, if they joke about it and don't pay attention to it, there's a lot of messaging going to young men right now in their teens and 20s and even up into 30 years old, that women are there to be your possession. Women are there to serve your needs. And it's very belligerent. It's very sexist. There's this pumping up of be a man, learn how to fight, do these exercises so that your jaw shape changes. You need to be an alpha. If you're a real man, you're going to the strip club and you make all this money and you drive the fancy cars, and it's this swagger of like, this has been stripped away from us in America and we need to reclaim our position as the alpha in society. And so in this particular case, and I think the Powell case, from what I know about it, there were probably 100, if not 1,000 examples going back to junior high when someone's like obsessed with a girl, and if she goes to the dance with a different boy, then they go absolutely ballistic, and all these things happen. When they're dating a girl as a freshman and the girl breaks up with them, and they go overboard with stalking them and showing up their house and doing like, if I can't have you, nobody can have you. So these warning signs happen from a very young age with men, and nobody intervenes. No, that's the time when you intervene. When this guy, and I don't know the details of this guy's, but let's take an abstract case. They have a guy that's displaying this behavior as a junior high kid, as a senior high kid. And then they go, oh, you know what I'm going to do to be a man? I'm going to go in the military. That's what real men do. Real men learn how to fight. Real men go to war. Real men carry a gun. I'm going to become a special forces guy, and I'm going to go out there and kick some ass and kill on behalf of America and kill, and be a Marine or whatever it is. And it feeds into this narcissism and this worldview that then when you get married and you have kids and it goes sideways, there's no one to blame.
Yeah, and if you ever, it's a great point. If you ever meet a warrior or you meet someone that's special forces, because God knows we need them, they never want to go to war. It's not about going to war. Especially if they've been to war, right? Sometimes some of the greatest presidents we have are those that have been to battle and they've been in war because they know we don't want to go to war.
And so to me, this is an epidemic, and that maybe, I don't think that's too strong of a word, where when young men start to display these behaviors, people do not intervene. And the next thing you know, they're sucked into a subculture online where you're getting toxic messages 24/7, and they have very low self-esteem. So they overlay onto that this possessive hyper-masculinity.
It's a kickback from the Me Too movement. I mean, the pendulum swings, and the pendulum's swinging the other way right now. And again,
I don't know the details of this particular person, but to me, it's a symptom of this change going on in culture right now, to where young men don't know what it is to be a man anymore. And they think that they have this caricature of a real man that's always in control, possesses these women and children, and have this hypermasculinity. And then when things don't go their way, they have zero skills to handle the anger and rejection. And sometimes, if you mix in a little bit of mental illness into this equation, what happened where they say, if these kids can't be with me, then nobody can have them. It spirals out of control. That's what breaks my heart, because when you spend time with young people, they are looking for the model of who am I going to be as an adult?
You can find that. You can like I see some of the new coaches that my son's around. I went to one of his practices the other night, and these are the kind of men. These are the kind of people I want him around. The teachers that he has, his strength coach, all those people are the kind of people I want him around. Those people are out there, but sometimes their voices are not being heard. To your point, and again, this isn't the media, you guys. This is the power of social media and the power of being on your phone and being on your screen. But I just want to go back to reunification. We have to empower foster parents out there that have stepped in, that have saved a child. There needs to be some kind of hope that they can adopt that child. And we have to stop with the reunification process when a child gets out of prison. You made, and your situation is very different, but you were raised in a very stable family by two parents that decided to adopt you. And it probably wouldn't have been the best if your mom or dad and your
definitely wouldn't have been
your dad who had been to Vietnam, your blood related mom and dad, if they would have been able to step in, snatch you out of the stability of that.
I have a worldview that a lot of people push back on, and that is your family members are nothing special. And people don't like to hear that, but when folks go, "Oh, blood's thicker than water," and I do anything for my family, I get that urge. But if your family members happen to be a piece of crap, doesn't matter that they're related to you. And in these cases that you talk about, where a judge, they should be able to look at this and have some sort of criteria to judge this by, but to be like, neither of you people deserves to take care of these three kids. Neither of you are good human beings. And so just because you happen to be related by DNA does not mean that we're going to destroy the lives of these young people. That's, to me, I never got, because it doesn't take a rocket surgeon to look at some of these folks and just go, you've disqualified yourself from being a parent.
Do you hope to see this guy in court, or do you hope he saved a bullet for himself?
I don't know if I have a strong opinion. Like, he's destroyed way more than he should have destroyed. I don't know what the court case is going to do, but I don't wish someone more violence on top of this violence.
I hope he saved a bullet for himself. We'll see you on the other side of this.
If you find yourself dreaming about a new home, go from just a dream to the dream team. Schedule your time at ronanddonsitdown.com.
All right, you guys, welcome back to the Ron and Don Show. Let's talk about summer vacation. Everybody's been very concerned about Canadians and really people from all over the world not wanting to come to the United States. I did see this story the other day. Eastside Catholic, a tremendous. I don't know if you've ever been to Eastside Catholic. My son was playing
good sports program.
My son was playing football against Eastside Catholic along with some other kids. It wasn't just him.
Right.
So we get off the bus over Eastside Catholic last year. I'd never been there, and I'm like, you know what? And I see their football team, and I'm like, these kids are midgets. We're going to destroy them, finally. Because at our school, they lost all their football coaches. It's only been out of mothballs for the last 5 years, so they're starting to rebuild the football program. And then my son says, well, that's not who we're playing.
That's the sixth grade team.
That was the sixth grade team. the 6th graders have their own field. So the 6th, 7th, 8th graders have their own field, and then there's another field where like their freshmen and JV practice, and then they have 3 different football fields.
Good facilities.
It blew me away when I saw that. So anyway, Eastside Catholic, they were up north in Canada. They're coming back down, and the next thing you know, Border Patrol was pulling aside, and they're saying what the kids are saying is, hey, they were pulling aside black kids and they weren't pulling aside white kids.
Yeah, to come back into the country that they were targeting children of color.
And I have to say, have you ever filled out a census form?
I think so, yeah.
I got a census form 2 days ago. A woman came to my door, said, you have to fill this out.
Right.
I'm going to keep coming to your door until this is filled out.
Yep.
You can call and we can talk about it on the phone, or there's a website that you can go to and you can fill out all this information. And if you don't do it, you're breaking the law, and this is what's going to happen to you. I've filled out census forms before. I've never had anyone be so heavy-handed with me, including the United States government. I was like, what is going on here? And then I went through and I started answering some of the questions. They really want to know how much money you make. I was asked 4 different times in 4 different ways the color of my skin, right? Your race, also the ethnic group that you come through. They really want to know how many people are living in your house, how many rooms that you have in your house. They want to know how much money you make. And then they start asking questions about your kid. And some of the questions, I have to say, are very, very uncomfortable. Some of the information that they asked for. And so anyway, I went through and I filled this out, and I went, they are using this census form to target black and brown people in this country, or people that they feel like might be here illegally. It was incredible. And it probably took about 30 minutes to do it. And I have to say, at the end of it, at the end of filling out that census form, it didn't feel good to me. And I started thinking about these kids that were up on the border. What would it be like if you've been watching the headlines that said that black and brown people are getting targeted in America, and then these kids are coming across the border and they're targeted? So we're finding out now internationally, and this may not sound like a big number, but people have cut airfares flying to the United States this summer by 12%. That's a huge number if you are in the tourism industry. Canada right now is by 6%, and they feel like it will probably grow to 10 and 12% this summer.
Here's something that I hadn't thought about in this regard. So there's been such an emphasis on the manufacturing thing. That's what the tariffs have all been about. That's what the economy, the wild swings we've had, has been about. Manufacturing in America. And so I went out and I started to just look around. I was like, okay, well, manufacturing is an important sector. How big's the tourism sector? So I just did some basic research and numbers. So manufacturing is about 3 times as big as the tourism sector.
Ron's doing this without notes.
Doing this without notes. I don't want to misquote numbers because people will be all up in my grill. Yeah. It's 3 times as big. But
manufacturing 3 times big.
If you take all of the manufacturing output in America, it's about 3 times the size of the tourism economy. However, both of them are very, very big.
Yeah.
And so if we are emphasizing one sector at the detriment of another sector, when you think about America as a whole, that doesn't get us closer to any of these stated goals. So I guess my point being is that when we have these policies and we start thinking about what changes we're going to make, and we start thinking about even the big, beautiful bill that's like having some hiccups as it gets down to the...
Elon Musk loves it, though.
Yeah.
Loves the bill.
Adding some major hiccups. Adding trillions of dollars to the debt. So if we're like, oh, we need manufacturing, that's the key to the whole thing. We're going to have to be this manufacturing company or a country. and it's at the expense of like a tourism situation, is just as many towns as that you're going to, maybe not just as many, but for every town that you're crushing that used to be a manufacturing hub, are we now going to crush the towns that are tourist hubs? So you have a lot of small towns on the border. Like you can think of all the stuff in Island County, right up, Bellingham, all that stuff, all the way down the coast. There are and you just drove the coast. There are tons of little towns that have little main streets where the whole thing is tourism.
Yeah, Cannon Beach. If the Canadians aren't showing up to Cannon Beach is going to be a lot of trouble.
And so I think that we haven't thought about that. And now when you see these things, and do you blame people? Do you blame people in Europe going, you know what? I've always wanted to go to Chicago, but I'm not going to do it this year. Now that I've seen what's going on in the United States, maybe I'll just do another European vacation. I'll go somewhere else closer to home. Canadians doing the same thing. So I think it's really short-sighted to take one sector of the American economy and to turn it into something that's bigger than it is, where we just say, oh, this is our emphasis. Be damned all the other people in America who have different jobs that are not in this sector. I think it's really shooting ourselves in the foot. The term I've heard a lot lately is like, this is the biggest own goal, where we're just, I don't get it, because I want people to come here. When I see tourists out and about in Seattle, if they're looking for directions or they seem like a little bit confused, I always go out of my way to help them out or to answer a question that they have. And I don't know. I love tourism. I love to show people great time when they come here. Think about this. Seattle's hosting some World Cup games next year. Think about the amount of money that is going to come into Seattle, depending on the teams that come into this city to play these games. It's going to be tens of millions of dollars between hotels and meals and ticket prices and bars and restaurants and Uber and all of the stuff that is correlated with that. We want that to happen in Seattle.
This, according to the New York Times, says overseas travelers say they're swapping U.S. vacation plans for trips to Europe or staying in their own countries. Some cite the Trump administration's immigration crackdown and reports of foreign visitors being detained or deported from the U.S. Others say they want to signal their discontent with the White House, their policies, echoing boycotts of American-made products by Canadians and Teslas in Europe. And that's the other thing that you have to look at. If you agree with what the administration is doing or not, look who's doing it, right? And we're going to talk about DEI in another podcast. But look at the cabinet. Can you find one black person sitting at that table? Can you find one Hispanic woman sitting at that table? Can you find many Hispanics sitting at that table? That table is a table full of white people that are making these decisions about black and brown people and women in this country, and especially women who are black and brown. And it felt like we had come so far, but again, that pendulum has swung the other way. And it doesn't matter so much what I think. Think about what these Europeans and Canadians are thinking long term when they're looking at our country and the reflection of that. And I have to say, when you see people that are voting with their dollars and they're voting with their feet by not coming here, that's going to have some long-term effects, Ron, that we don't even see right now. We don't see. We see some of the ripples that are beginning, but we do not see the long-term effects about the isolation that we have created for America by a bunch of white people. A bunch of white people. Just go look at the staff of the white. It's all white people sitting around a big table. And that's
the biggest one is going to be, if we keep adding these trillions of dollars of debt, will the rest of the world want to buy our debt? Like, we're losing our AAA rating. Yeah. When that happens, and the percentage of the U.S. economy that just goes to debt is now, I think, the second line item after Medicare. And so it's fastly approaching where more of our taxes are going to go to just servicing the debt than any other, more than the military, more than healthcare, more than education, more than any other category. And like, that's the road we're headed on. That is not a good, strong position to be
And I
in.
hope our kids and our grandkids don't put up with this. And just to put a bow around it, here's 2 stories now about kids. Well, we're not doing a good job protecting kids or even respecting kids or modeling things for kids. We talked about these 3 young girls in Wenatchee who lost their lives brutally by their father because the court system was not looking out for them because of reunification. And now you have these kids at Eastside Catholic that are up spending dollars and time and learning about history up in Canada, and then they're coming back. What's it like for a white student to just walk through, and then you look over and you see your black friend has been detained? That's some bullshit. We'll see you on the other side. Hey, you guys, it's Ron and Don for our good friends at Les Schwab, our title sponsor here at the Ron and Don Show. And I bet a lot of you guys are planning a summer getaway right now, or maybe you're just heading out on a weekend trip. Who knows? Before you hit the road, listen to us. Swing by your neighborhood Les Schwab Tire Center. They're going to do a free pre-trip safety check. What does that mean? Well, the pros are going to come out. They'll inspect your tires, your brakes, your battery, your suspension, your alignment, and they're going to make sure you're going to have a smooth, safe trip. Hey, whether you're headed to the coast, the mountains, or anywhere in between, Les Schwab will help ensure that your vehicle, Ron, is road trip ready, right?
At Les Schwab, not only do you get the best service around, their pre-trip safety check is always free. That is music to my ears. I love me some free. That's why you get more from less. Visit your local Les Schwab or book your appointment today at leschwab.com. That's leschwab.com.
Ron and Don, from radio to real estate. When you're ready to grab a cup of coffee and sit down with the guys, go to ronanddonsitdown.com.
All right, you guys, welcome back to the Ron and Don Show. We're going to lighten things up here a little bit. I'll take you back to the 1990s. Randy Johnson here, the big unit. He had a season in the 90s, I think it was 95 when they made their run, where he went 27-3. He was just amazing. And if you had an opportunity to watch him in the Kingdom like Ron and I did, it's where we fell in love with baseball. We fell in love with Mariners. We fell in love with that 90s team. And it was finally where the Mariners, because before that, the Mariners were never legit. The sad thing is, though, is you think about that 95 team, if they would have had another year or two together, all together, you'd look back at the 95 team and we'd be talking about the 96, the 97, the 98 team. That doesn't happen because we allowed that team to be dismantled. And the next thing you know, you see Tito Martinez and he's playing for the Yankees. And then you see someone like Randy Johnson and now he's an Arizona Diamondback. The Mariners have announced this week, and Randy Johnson said he would not. They wanted to retire his number this year. He said, "I will not do it because I don't want to show disrespect toward Ichiro."
Right.
So they said, "Well, we'd like to retire your number next year." What say you about retiring Randy's number when a lot of us loved him here as a Mariner, and he certainly had success here, but all his championships and his Hall of Fame was solidified in Arizona. What say you? And the thing that pissed Randy off, and I talked to him about it, he came down here and he was playing. Anytime the Mariners ask him to do something, he shows up, especially from the 95 team. And the current skipper of the Mariners, he was actually my coach when we were doing celebrity softball. So I had Dan Wilson. I think you had Jay Buhner, right? Those guys are very good friends. Jay is now on the broadcast, which he is awesome on the broadcast. I don't know if you heard him when he sits on the radio sometimes. He's just a good old boy, some cowboy boots on, eating some popcorn, talking ball. He was so great. So anyway, they'd get on the phone and this was when Randy had just got done playing in Arizona. He came there and you could see that socially, and Randy's a little awkward. In fact, he ended up, I think my son was 4 or 5 at the time, and he ended up tossing a softball with him. and my son told him that he was doing it wrong because he was throwing it underhand. We were
Right.
getting ready to play softball.
Your son did coach up
So
Randy.
he corrected the big unit on throwing the ball.
I bet he
correctly,
loved that.
which was awesome. Randy could not have been nicer. So I'm pumped that we're gonna do this. And at the same time, it pisses me off that it reminds me that we let this great team go. And for so long, the Mariners have been a farm system for teams like the Diamondbacks and the Yankees, and it drives me nuts. What say you?
It's interesting because I want to retire Randy's number, and I think you definitely retire Ichiro's number. But you think about someone like Alex Rodriguez. So Alex Rodriguez came up through the Mariners organization, and we were there the first day we were doing sports radio. The very first day that he put on a Mariner uniform. So someone like that, he's not beloved though. Was he a great player?
He would have been. He would have been.
He could have been, and he would have been.
He took the $250 million.
Right, and he left.
And he went to Texas.
And so you think about, I think there's a combination of exploits on the field for retiring a number. Retiring a number.
If you remember, Alex Rodriguez, when he was that young, we were doing an appearance up at
Acura dealership.
Linwood of Acura.
Acura of Linwood.
Acura of Linwood. He had been flying all night, was very sick, and he still showed up, and he signed for over 200 people at the store. He was beloved. He was young and beloved.
He started off beloved.
People hated him.
Do you think he's beloved now?
They hate him because he left.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm saying,
and that's the thing with Randy. Randy says, I want to correct the record. People think I left Seattle, and I heard him in an interview recently about it. He said, I didn't leave Seattle. I was traded. And he said, I want to make sure if they're going to retire my number, that people understand that I love the city. I didn't want to leave, but I was forced out. In Alex's case, he took the $250 million, $250 million,
Sure.
which was the biggest contract in baseball at the time. And he's like, I'm going to take that contract because the Mariners aren't offering me anything close to that. So I don't think you can blame Randy, and I don't think you can blame Alex.
No, but I'm saying for me, if I'm retiring a number, does the player, are they iconic? Do their numbers in the game, regardless of what team they were on, are they an upper echelon? Like, it has to be pretty rarefied air to retire someone's number. And then 3, does the city of Seattle embrace this guy as part of them? And so for someone like Griffey Jr., 100% yes. Ichiro, 100%. Randy Johnson, yes. Edgar, yes. Alex Rodriguez, no. I don't think
we weren't talking about Alex Rodriguez.
No, we're not. So I'm saying yes to big unit.
We were talking about Randy Johnson.
Yes to Randy.
And your hatred for Alex Rodriguez, this always turns into I hate Alex show.
I'm saying for me personally, I can't wait to retire because when I go to the game,
you can't wait to retire.
I can't wait. Yes, I can't wait to retire, and I can't wait to retire Ichiro's number as well.
Yeah.
Whenever I go to a game, I'm sitting there and I was like, okay, they've got number 42, which is retired across all of Major League Baseball for Jackie Robinson. I think that's great. And then you got Griffey Jr. And and I think they've retired Dave Niehaus. Those are like the 3 plaques out there. I think
Edgar's out there.
I don't know if his number's retired. I don't know.
To your point, there's not a lot of numbers retired with the Mariners, and there's not when you go to a Denver Bronco game and look
the
around,
Ring of Honor.
There's 3 tiers of the Ring of Honor.
But they're not all retired. Their numbers, I don't know. They put them in the ring. It's not the same thing. But your point's well taken.
We don't retire numbers, and we don't have a lot of people in any of our rings because maybe there's not enough to honor. Right?
But you're right.
These are very young teams.
At that time, more money would have got us a World Series.
That's right.
That was the window.
Yep.
And people knew it at the time. We knew it at the time, and we know nothing about baseball. At the time, we're like, this is your shot.
Yeah.
And when the Seahawks, it was happening, I remember many times on the radio when you and I were talking, and it's like, this doesn't come together very often.
Yep.
People were like looking at the New England Patriot era of how many times.
Well, this happened
in 2000. It comes together when
Yeah.
it comes together, and you have to capitalize it because that window closes, and you can't put the genie back in the bottle.
That happened with the 2005 team, who really did win that Super Bowl, and that certainly happened in 2013 as well. So, hey, you guys, thanks for listening to this episode of the Ron and Don Show. I know some of it today may have felt a little heavy, and I think it's okay sometimes to come in here because these are very important stories when it comes to our kids, when it comes to our country and it comes to who's making decisions for all of us. And that includes black and brown people in this country, and it certainly includes women in this country. And so when I see the majority of a table, white men sitting around that table making decisions for the rest of us, it pisses me off. And then when I see that we haven't learned anything from the Josh Powell case in the state of Washington, and we're still trying to reunify and foster parents have no rights, it makes me very angry and upset. And it also makes me angry, upset, when every time I talk about the 95 team and anything with the Seattle Mariners, it always turns into hate from Ron Upshaw towards Alex Rodriguez.
But I love Joey Cora.
Hey, thanks for listening. Want to express our appreciation for Grace for working on our studio. Matt is here today, off the mic and on the mic. He just had a very long nap, and I could tell from his hair sticking straight up in the air. So it looks like he slept well last night. We thank him for producing the show. Want to thank my 7-year-old version of my son, who's a station voice. Of course, Charlie the dog, who's out in the van, and he's Ron Upshaw. I'm Don O'Neill. Follow us on our social media, because a lot of what we're doing here, and even our YouTube page and our YouTube shorts, we put all that on social media, right?
Yeah, he's Don O'Neill. I'm Ron Upshaw, and we would also love to help you in your real estate journey. So if you are thinking about buying, selling, or investing in real estate, you can trust us to partner with you to put together a plan. It starts with a Ron and Don sit down. You can go to ronanddonsitdown.com, book it there, or you just email me directly, ron@ronanddon.com.
Yeah. All right. Till next time, keep your head up and your shoulders back. And you've been listening to the Ron and Don Show only on the Ron and Don Radio Network.
Well, that's it. Show's over. We'll see you next time on the Ron and Don Radio Network.